last bit of rendering before we head on into Nuke. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to give this a bit of a environment. So I just have a ground plane. Okay, very simple. If I do a render, it's just a ground plane with a rock texture, right? Nothing much to it. There is a bump map to it, so it's not perfectly, flat. Okay. But this is just the default lighting, okay, that came with the sky dome light that we used for the particles. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to light this a certain way. Okay, so it looks like the blue uh, energy ball we have, the Will-O-Wisp, is lighting the ground. Okay, and we're gonna do that in post. Okay, now just about 100% of the time, or pretty much 100% of the time, you're going to render your particles separately. Okay, so you render them separately from the environment. Okay, in this case, the ground plane. So if you had characters, if you had like a full-on environment or a cityscape or something like that, a room, they would be separate from the particles. Okay, so we rendered the particles already against black. That's fine. Now we want to render this. Okay, so I have my ground plane. I have the light coming from the sky dome. That's fine. Okay, and now I want to light this area as if there's a blue ball that's lighting it. Okay, I'm gonna make another sphere. Okay, so this is my original. This is my, yeah. Okay, this is my second sphere. Right? I'm going to scale it roughly the same size. Hide the original. And I'll just rename this by sphere. Okay, stop that. And then I'm going to turn this into a light. Okay, so to do that, you just go to your Arnold shelf and you pick the second choice. This one right here, object mesh light. Or under Arnold lights, look for mesh light. Same deal. Okay, now if I render, you see the sphere is gone. Okay, let me just render at a lower resolution so it's faster and easier. There you go. But when I have my light sphere, I click in the outliner, you see inside there's a light sphere. And this gives me light settings. So I can actually turn up the exposure, for example, let's say 10 or 15. There we go. And I can change the color. So I can get like a nice blue, right? Okay, too much. So you can play around with this. Okay. And then the sky dome light, since we don't need this for the particles anymore, right? Because we're done with the particles. I can make changes to this, right? I can say my exposure will be like -2. So it's not that bright. See? So you would have something like this. Okay, so this is something I can work with, right? And what we want to do now is we want to render this in such a way that we can edit it in Nuke, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to render one image, but it's going to give me the ability to edit both lights in Nuke, right? And that's used using something called AOVs, or arbitrary output values. Okay, so going up here to my render settings, okay, I just have some I can just delete. There you go. If we go from your common, usually you go to AOVs, this tab here. This is where you make those AOVs, right? So simply said, AOVs are parts of an image or aspects of an image. And the idea is within one image, you have the ability to separate them out and edit them individually. Okay, so there are a bunch of AOVs that are pre-made, but for light AOVs, you have to do it yourself. Okay, so we'll discuss the AOVs a bit more later in a different video, different class. But for this one, we just want to make the AOVs for the lights. Okay. So you just go add custom and you type in RGBA, okay, underscore, and then you give it a name, right? So this is going to be a way to categorize your lights. Okay, so I'm going to put in dome, right? And I'm going to go to my dome light. Okay, so here under AOV light group, make sure it's named dome. Okay, I already did this. That's why it already has the name. Uh, but it's usually named something else. It's like default or whatever. So if you put this as dome, that means that this AOV is going to contain only this dome light, right? So if I make another AOV, so say RGBA underscore, um, let's say blue. Okay, so blue light, right? Great. I go to the light that's coming from here and I type in blue light, right? So if all goes well now, and I click and I render, okay, I have, you see the beauty and just the blue light and just the dome light. And these you can adjust in Nuke, okay? Now when you render this, go to the common tab, make sure that merged AOVs is checked, okay? So that it'll give you one image, EXR, that has different channels per AOV. If this is not checked, then per AOV will be a separate image. Okay, it's just easier to, easier to manage if everything's in one image and you have this. Okay, now let's do this. So we only need one image. Camera is not moving. So I can say start frame, frame one, end frame, frame one also, and that should work. So if I check, want to make sure my size is the same. Last one I did was 720. Okay. All right. And then you do the same thing we did um, for the particles and you do a render sequence.